You know Gray Bar for electrical parts, but there's one more thing you may not be thinking of us for that can help maximize your next project's total value. Our pre-project planning services are designed to help you win the bid, save on labor costs, and keep your installers productive across your entire build. The sooner you call us, the better. Because when we're there from the beginning, we can anticipate your needs and help you solve problems before they become problems. Yep, Gray Bar does that.
As we start with this week's episode of the show before the show, I feel like we owe everybody a big thank you. We just, Sam today sent out some numbers for our listenership in the month of August and over the summer. August, for like the fifth time this year, was the most listened month in the history of this podcast. And thank you to all of you who have tuned in. It's super cool.
Yeah, no, thank you so much to everybody out there who continues to listen to us. And, it's been really fun to watch metrics, I guess. Metrics is such like a big word in baseball right now, but to watch podcast metrics and see how the audience is growing. As I mentioned in the email, and I'll mention to you guys at home too, obviously we had a lot going for us in August in terms of there being a full month of Major League Baseball and things we know you guys care about and actual action on the field and prospects being called up and all that fun stuff. But the fact that so many of you were interested in the game, in the lower levels of the game, even at a time when minor league baseball isn't happening, unfortunately, is really telling to us. And what that tells us is that you guys are still excited about the sport. You're excited about the young talent in the sport and where that young talent can take the entire game of baseball. And week in and week out, we're trying to bring you their stories and updates on where guys stand and who's new and who's coming and all that kind of stuff. And to know that you guys are out there listening is really cool. I know for me and for Tyler and for Ben and the rotating chair we have each week with our MiLB writers, last week being Katie Wu, Josh Jackson, and Joe Bloss, and so many others that we've had on the show over the last couple of weeks. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for being here this week. We've got a lot to dive into this week. But yeah, hopefully September will be an even better month for all of us for many reasons.
Yeah, but big thanks to all of you. We're super excited about that news and excited to talk to you again on this week's episode of the show before the show. He is Sam Dykstra. I'm Tyler Vaughn. Thanks for hanging out with us. Recording this on Wednesday, the 2nd of September, which means that we are 2 days past the Major League trade deadline in 2020. We saw a lot of guys on the move. We saw a lot of organizations reshaping either their system or their Major League roster by reshaping their system. And there are a bunch of deals that we could discuss kind of all on their own merits, but we're going to get a sort of broader view of all of it. Sam, what stood out most to you? Obviously, the San Diego Padres, I think, are probably the team that has been most discussed as it pertains to the 2020 trade deadline. But what are some of the biggest things that you took away from the deadline this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these have been well tread at this point if you followed trade deadline coverage at all. The fact that the Padres were buyers is pretty huge given what we know of that franchise and how long it's been since they got in the postseason. It's an expanded postseason, but they're one of the most exciting teams in baseball. We've been beating that drum for years now, it feels like, knowing what the farm system could produce ever since Fernando Tatis Jr. and Chris Paddock got there. We tried to say, more waves are coming. And now it's gotten to the point where they are bona fide contenders and they're trying to supplement those farm built pieces with pieces outside the organization. Mike Clevenger being a big part of that in that trade for them. But what stands out from our standpoint here, covering the minor leagues and covering prospects, is how they were able to do this without letting go of really their top prospects. Taylor Trammell, one of their top 100 guys, was the only top 100 prospect traded at this year's deadline. And we'll get to him in a little bit. But the fact that Mackenzie Gore is still in the organization, Luis Patino, Luis Campisano, C.J. Abrams, Robert Hassel III had to stay in. He can't be traded during the season right now, but it's still a really good draft pick they made this summer. He's still around. Ryan Weathers, we had on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, he's still in the organization. A lot of the players that we were most excited about from that farm system are still a part of the organization and could conceivably, especially in the case of somebody like Mackenzie Gore, help out this year. So the pipeline's still pretty good. we haven't done farm system rankings since the offseason, but if I were to put it right now, I know MLB Pipeline updated theirs. They had the Padres at number 3. I might actually still have the Padres at number 2, behind only the Tampa Bay Rays, because of that top level of prospects. The fact that they're able to do this tells you how strong the farm system was. The fact that they could trade, looking at that Clevenger deal, let's break it down here. They traded major leaguers Austin Hedges, Kyle Quantrill, and Josh Naylor. But they also traded Gabriel Arias, Joey Cantillo, and Owen Miller, who in other systems might be really, really solid prospects. For the Padres, their depth. Arias is a really good shortstop coming off a breakout year last year at Class A Advanced Lake Elsinore. But at shortstop, they have Fernando Tatis Jr. He's hopefully going to be there for the long term. It was going to be a couple of years until Arias bumped into that, but still not a position of worry for them right now. Joey Cantillo had a breakout year last year at Class A Fort Wayne. He was a low draft pick, and they turned him into one of the most dominant pitchers at Class A last year. The stuff isn't quite there to match those numbers. He throws in the high 80s, maybe low 90s, but there's some deception coming from his delivery. He's a left-handed pitcher. Now all of a sudden they spin him into a potential ace in Mike Clevenger. And Owen Miller, again, a shortstop, probably a second baseman, middle infield depth, but someplace the Padres have pretty well covered. They were aggressive with him last year, sending him to Double-A Amarillo in his first season. Now he moves to the Indians, where they have some depth up the middle too, but they're going to, in a couple of years, try to figure out who is their long-term solution at shortstop, because Francisco Lindor could be moved maybe as early as this offseason if they try to trade him, or potentially in a few years when he hits free agency. So this is one of those deals that seems to work out okay for both sides. Mike Clevenger seemed like surplus, which is crazy to think about, where he stood in that organization at the beginning of the season, but breaking COVID protocols, the ascent of Tristan McKenzie and him looking incredibly good for the Indians meant they could trade him. And the Padres in the same way could cash in some of their chips and get an even better pitcher and a potential ace for them to add to Paddock and Dinelson Lamet. So the Padres spending in this way, I know AJ Preller has always wanted to be a big buyer. Now taking advantage of that was really exciting, but the fact that they have so many top 100 prospects in the system is even more reason for San Diego fans to get excited. Potentially having Clevenger, Gore, Patino, Lamet, and Paddock in some sort of rotation or some sort of system in which some guys are working as long men, some guys are working as openers. I didn't even mention Adrian Morejon. That's really, really exciting. So the Padres were the obvious winner here, but even from a minor league perspective, the fact that they kept so many guys around is huge for that organization going forward, not only in 2020, but 2021, 2022 as well.
So obviously the Padres with a ton of moves and a team trying to make a run right now in a strange season, and they are very well positioned in the playoff picture. The rest of Major League Baseball, there are some other teams that had some intriguing moves at the deadline. Cleveland, a team that is right now in a division where things have been somewhat surprising. I know the Detroit Tigers finished, again, we're recording this on Wednesday. They finished last night, I believe, a half game out of the postseason picture, half game behind Toronto. In that American League Central right now, it's the White Sox and the Tribe deadlock. They're 22-14 as we record today. The White Sox seem pretty set with where they are right now. They've got such a talented group, still some talented pieces in the system. But Cleveland goes out and makes some moves. Tell us about what they did.
Yeah, so talking about like Mike Clevenger, they were able to trade him, like we said before, because Tristan McKenzie has done really well. But just looking at the prospect package that they brought back, I specifically want to highlight Joey Cantillo. But just I'll get to him in a second. But just this system as a whole right now, I'm actually pretty high on the Cleveland Indians system already. I think they have a lot of interesting pieces. But it's funny to look at them and think they only have one top 100 prospect in Nolan Jones. A little surprising to me, maybe not as surprising to people who don't follow this as closely because there's not a lot of household names here. But it is a lot of really good talent. So adding an Arias to that group, adding a Cantillo to that group, adding Owen Miller to that group only makes it deeper. The big thing about the Cleveland system right now is that it is deep, especially up the middle, as I said before, trying to find Lindor's replacement. Tyler Freeman used to be a top 100 prospect, kind of got pushed out of that mix because of the draft picks from this year and the lack, in a way, of graduations and an inability for him to improve, at least show it to us. But Brian Rocchio's there. They just drafted a shortstop in Carson Tucker, brother of Cole Tucker of the Pittsburgh Pirates fame. So adding Miller and Arias to that group only makes it deeper, only strengthens the idea that they will be able to find a Lindor replacement, which is huge because they're going to need that soon down the line. Like I said, maybe as soon as this offseason. But looking at Cantillo is almost a perfect pitcher for the Cleveland system. What do I mean by that? Cleveland has thrived in the last couple of years at taking pitchers with really good control and bumping up their stuff to the point where they still find the zone, but they're getting it with a little bit of extra velocity, a little sharper breaking pitches. Shane Bieber's obviously the big example of that. I loved following Shane Bieber in the minors. The guy never walked anyone. He was consistently at the top of walk percentage rates across the minor leagues. And I always thought, okay, if he can get a little bit more out of his stuff, this guy could be really good. Lo and behold, that's what happened. As he got to Columbus, as he got to Cleveland, he was bumping up that velocity just a little bit to the point where he's now the Cy Young favorite in the American League. I don't think it's particularly close. He's their obvious ace. At a time when they used to have Bauer and Clevenger, who knew that it would be Bieber to be the number one pitcher in that Cleveland organization? He certainly got there now, but they've done it with other pitchers where Aaron Civale, Zach Plesac, who I know we're not all high on Zach Plesac right now, but that's the type of pitcher he was in the minors as well. Joey Cantillo, pretty good control numbers last year between Class A and Class A Advanced. Like I said, the velocity's not there yet, and he's a left-hander unlike some of these other guys who are right-handers. But if Cleveland can work its magic again, get him a little bit more velocity so he's hitting 92, 93 with more regularity, maybe even 94, 95, everything else is there for him to be a really, really good pitcher, and it only helps that he's throwing the ball from the left-hand side. So the fact that Cleveland picked him up causes me to arch my eyebrow a little bit in a Dwayne The Rock Johnson way. And Cantillo is somebody I was already going to be following just to see if he can carry that breakout he had last year to the upper levels. Now he's in the perfect system for that to happen. So Cleveland, I think, did fairly well here. For getting rid of Clevenger. Yeah, he has some years of control left. Yeah, he's a really good pitcher when he's following COVID protocols. But to get a deeper system at a time when they already had a deep system is really good work for them. And I'll be following this group of three pretty closely whenever minor league baseball does return in 2021.
Last element of this trade deadline, Sam, that I want to talk about, the seemingly absurd number of players to be named later who were included in deals. Sam's got a great toolshed column that is up on the site right now, 5 trade deadline takeaways. There were 30 players to be named who were traded in August. And you point out in the David Phelps deal alone, 3 players to be named later were sent from the Phillies to the Brewers. What's the deal with this?
Yeah, so part of the COVID rules of 2020, right, are that, and we'll talk to Connor Seabold about this in a little bit, is that technically you're only allowed to be traded if you are a member of the other team's 60-man player pool. Now, we saw a rush of prospects added in August to player pools. Part of that was to get them in place, to get work, to allow them to see minor league coaches and see player development people and all that, and that's great. But it really made me think that some decent prospects could be traded because now they were officially part of the pool. That didn't really end up happening. Like we said, Taylor Trammell was the only top 100 prospect traded this year. But one thing that we didn't, at least wasn't obvious at the forefront, but obviously GMs and other decision makers were thinking about this, just because you can't name the player doesn't mean you can't trade them. So there were a lot of these deals in which that GMs were sitting down and saying, hey, we will agree to send you Johnson. I don't know, name I'm pulling out of my hat. But like the names were agreed to, they just can't publicly say it because they're not part of the player pool. It was a way they got around it. And that's unfortunate for these prospects because, if you are a member of the Phillies organization who is traded or, who wasn't part of the player pool, now, unless you've heard directly from the club, you might be thinking the rest of the season and into the postseason, I could be traded when all this is over. So it's really unfortunate way of going about it. I don't really see the advantage of limiting it to the 60-man player pool. Hopefully the 60-man player pool is just a 2020 thing to begin with. Like, that's it. We're just doing it this year. We know there's no minor leagues. The reason it was there is to have guys ready to potentially be called up and working out together and all that. So hopefully that doesn't exist in 2021 anyways. But players to be named later used to be like, hey, let's just get this deal done now and we'll figure out the details later. This year it was used in a way of like, hey, the rules say we can't do this, but let's do it anyways and circumvent that. And it's just a mockery of the process. Let's call it what it is. So I wish that wouldn't have been in place. You saw some teams actually leaking who they were trading. Anyway, I saw, Mike Minor got traded from the Rangers to the A's, and pretty quickly everybody knew who the Rangers were getting in that deal. And there was 2019 picks, Marcus Smith and Dustin Harris, even though the team could not technically name them. So good for those guys for knowing, but they technically can't join the Texas system until after the year. So it's just a fluke thing in 2020. I think it's unfortunate the way it was handled to begin with the rules in place. But like I said, hopefully it's something we leave behind in this very strange season. Tyler, before we wrap up here, as somebody was following the trade deadline and the Rockies were involved, they got Michael Givens. They traded two of their really good prospects in Taron Vavra and Tyler Nevin, excuse me. If they traded Phil Nevin, that would be something. Tyler Nevin. But what did you make of this trade deadline? Did it feel more active to you? Did it feel less active? Did it feel just about right? Like, how did this trade deadline feel on your end?
It felt more active than I was expecting it to feel. I figured a lot of teams kind of knowing where they stood after a month and a half of play in a year in which over half the teams in each league are going to make the playoffs. I did not think that we were going to see that many moves, but I think the flip side of that coin is, and I think the Padres are kind of the prime example of this right now. If you can try to catch lightning in a bottle in the weirdest and shortest season in baseball history and maybe do something that your franchise has never done, win a World Series or something like that, why not go for that? The other thing that played into this, which was I thought would be a factor and probably was in front offices and all that, is the difficulty of, and we'll talk about this coming up here with Connor Seabold in a little bit. And thankfully he didn't have to go, and he actually notes that he didn't have to go across the country or something like that. But the difficulty in trading prospects right now, or in trading major league guys right now, and asking them in the middle of a pandemic to pick up and move, whether it's across the country or across the time zone or whatever, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that has never been thought about before this year. So I figured that organizations might be a little bit more conservative in their approach in that regard, but it was more active than I thought it was going to be. How did you see it in terms of the level of activity?
Yeah, no, I was surprised at how normal of a year it felt like. You mentioned my tool shed before. That's how I kind of wrote about it. It's like, all in all, this was a normal year. I mean, there wasn't Taylor Trammell, and we have some Taylor Trammell facts later. I know we keep bringing up his name. Don't worry. We'll get to him at the end of the show. But he was the only top 100 prospect traded, and that wasn't normal in terms of that. Teams were not willing to sell their biggest assets from the minor league pipeline, but they were willing to be active. There were fewer trades for rentals than I was expecting. I'll put it that way. I thought there would be a lot of trades for rentals just because teams would be more willing to part with somebody who's not going to be with the team for 1 month. But at that point, you might not even be willing to meet a price for that because you're not going to trade much for 1 month of a player. So we saw more deals for Clevenger, who, it's multiple years of control for him. Mitch Moreland going from the Red Sox to the Padres got the Red Sox back a couple decent prospects in Jason Rosario and Hudson Potts, because Mitch Moreland has an option for next year that's very team friendly at only $3 million. And especially if this DH sticks in the NL, he has additional value. Teams were able to work out some more creative deals than I was expecting them to for controllable players. Because I think that's the big thing right now is that, the Padres did go fairly, I won't say all in on 2020, but they made some big moves in anticipation of a deep postseason run this year. But they also got guys like Clevenger, Moreland, Austin Nola from Seattle, who they're going to be able to use next year as well. And that's big. And that's just being kind of opportunistic and finding teams that were selling and getting those guys for multiple years. But I thought this wasn't going to be much. Everybody was going to stick to what they had, but it's more fun when teams are active. And this was certainly part of that. I wish there would have been a Lance Lynn deal. That's what I will say. We'll wrap it up with that. The Texas Rangers really should have found a way to make a Lance Lynn deal happen. The Dodgers were being mentioned at the time, and the Dodgers, we know, have tons of prospects to trade. The Yankees seemed interested. They need some starting pitching help. The Braves should have been interested. I know there were some rumors floating around about maybe Drew Waters going. That would have been more fun. Lance Lynn, I think, would have been the big deal of this trade deadline season, and it seemed like the closest, but it never happened. But otherwise, a little bit more active than we were expecting in this weird year.
So one of the guys who was on the move in this trade deadline season, Connor Seabold, will join the show coming up next. Now a member of the Boston Red Sox organization, traded there from the Phillies. We'll hear what that whole process was like and what it's been like getting acclimated to a new organization in this strange 2020 campaign. Connor Seabold joins the show next.
This past year has shown us that without your health, you have nothing. If you're not well, you can't work, look after yourself, or take care of your family. You can't enjoy the life you've worked so hard to build. That's why you need to prioritize taking care of your long-term health today, before it goes from good to bad to worse. So invest in your long-term health with Forward. Forward is intelligent medicine with a personal touch. Their doctors are dedicated to catching top killers like cancer and heart disease early before it's too late. And catching them early could save you tens of thousands of dollars in the long run. Everyone's health history is different, which is why Forward doctors personalize a health plan with you, based on your genetics, lifestyle, and biometrics to achieve long-term results and ensure nothing gets missed. It's time to invest in a doctor that's invested in you. Go to GoForward.com today to protect your future health. That's GoForward.com. GoForward.com.
Talking about the trade deadline last segment, and in the run-up to the trade deadline in 2020, our guest on this week's episode of the Show Before the Show podcast found himself as one of the traded prospects in this strange and surreal and shortened 2020 campaign. But now, a couple weeks into getting settled in with his new organization, Boston Red Sox right-handed pitcher Connor Seabold joins the show, 23rd ranked prospect in that system right now. Connor, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good. Just got back from the field. Got a little rain today, so no inter squad, but it's all good.
Well, tell us about the last couple of weeks. August 21st, you get the news. You've been traded as part of a package, a couple of players going to Boston in exchange for a couple of pitchers. It was an all-pitcher deal, actually. Tell us about how that whole thing went down. It was August 21st, so it's a couple of weeks ago now, but still probably feels a little strange. What are the last couple of weeks been like for you?
I'm definitely still getting used to it. I'll still get to the field, and it's weird not seeing like the same faces that I was seeing over in Lehigh, but slowly but surely getting more comfortable. But no, it's been cool so far. They've treated us really well. They got us in really quick. Like obviously there's like the intake period where they have to have us kind of be on our own, but once that was done, we were thrown right into it, and so far so good.
This year obviously is weird enough in every respect, but to be traded during this year and to be somebody who's at one alternate site and going to another one throws a whole different set of wrinkles into it. When you got the news and you figured out, all right, well, now I kind of got to move and I got to do all this stuff, how do you handle that in a year like 2020?
Well, I mean, obviously having to pack up one night and move the next is always an adventure. But on the bright side, it wasn't anywhere like too far. I'm not like flying across country or anything, so that's good at least. But I mean, it was kind of a like last minute kind of thing, I guess, because I got the call I think at like 9 at night that they were gonna pull the trigger on this deal and that I was going to come or get traded to the Red Sox. And the next day I had all my stuff together heading up to Rhode Island around like 11. So it was a quick turnaround. And so that part of it was crazy, but like I said, like it could have been a lot crazier.
And you mentioned your time at the alternate site in Lehigh before that. One of the interesting wrinkles of this season is that technically you're not supposed to be traded or named in a trade at the very least, unless you were part of the 60-man player pool. It's obvious that the Phillies were going to try to be bullpen buyers at the deadline. What was just like the scene like at the alternate site with all of you guys together, some of whom might have been at AA, some of them might have been at high A or even AAA, all knowing that you guys could be the ones traded in this scenario. It's not like, everybody spread out. Everybody was centralized around that Lehigh site. So what was the scene like there?
Well, as far as like the whole like trading thing on the mind, I honestly didn't even think about it until that morning. Like, oh, there might be a chance that I get traded today, because the whole thing about like, oh, the Phillies are going after Workman stuff started coming out, and it was like, it kind of dawned on me like, well, I guess some of us are potentially going to be on the move. And that's when it like really first clicked in. And then sure enough, later that night, everything went down. And so, I don't know. I don't think it really, was on anybody's mind up until like stuff started happening. But I mean, overall the vibe there was pretty consistently just like, it's tough, but like, it's tough having to be here every day doing the same thing. But I mean, we were so close to the big league. So that's what kept us going, in that time. But, overall it was kind of just like a whirlwind where it wasn't even on anybody's minds. And then all of a sudden, oh, wow, this could happen kind of thing.
And what was that transition period like? I know you talked about the intake time, and you and Nick Pivetta had to be kind of on your own for a little while until you were given the green light. But at what point have you even gone through this yet, of switching from showing this new organization what you have? Obviously, they knew a lot about you. There's a reason why they acquired you. So showing new coaches, new staff what you have versus trying to gel into this organization and trying to fit a puzzle piece going forward. What is that transition like, especially now when you're not technically pitching for a minor league team?
I mean, when we first got here, obviously, like, you take 3 or 4 days off from like doing your regular thing. You're thrown out of your routine a little bit. I mean, it was just like show up, play catch, go home, and that was it for 3 or 4 days. And like coming back after it, I think our first day on the field, we actually had bullpens, and it like I don't know how Nick's was, but mine was pretty bad. But like the coaches were pretty like understanding that, oh, this guy's got to knock off some rust. He hasn't done anything in like 3 or 4 days, so. Just kind of like they were cool about like the transition and like letting me kind of like get back into my rhythm. And I mean, since then it's been pretty smooth sailing, but I mean, you definitely want to make a good first impression. And I mean, I pitched in the game the other day, did pretty well, and I thought I left a good mark as far as like first impressions go. And I think that's huge, obviously, just like kind of reaffirming to a team like, okay, you traded for this, so I'm going to try and give you this. And so far I'd say I've done an okay job of it, small sample size, but I mean, I'm pretty happy with what's gone down so far.
And when you say they traded for this, I know Hein Bloom talked about, you having a starting profile and them really liking your stuff so far, especially coming off the AFL, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But what do you feel like, what expectations do you feel like you have to meet given the conversations you've had with them so far?
Well, it's evident that they traded for Nick and I for a reason. Like they really like what they saw. They feel like we're going to be pieces in the upcoming future of this organization. And I mean, it's a big deal, but I mean, you can't really let it change what you do. I mean, that's been the biggest thing for me, is not trying to do too much, not trying to be something that I'm not, and kind of just sticking with what's made me successful for the last couple of years.
Connor, last year, let's go back to, this time 9 months ago when we were all living relatively normal lives, and think about the 2019 season. 2019, you've got an oblique issue, and it limits you on the minor league side to 12 appearances, and the numbers are good over those 12 appearances, but it's really after the season, you get healthy, you go to the fall league and really break out, and to get that experience is always something big for any prospect, but especially in a season in which you're kind of trying to make up innings and do all those types of things. What did the fall league do for you from a confidence standpoint to be able to, somewhat salvage a little bit of 2019? Take us through that experience.
Well, for me, it was just kind of doing what I thought I would have been doing during the season. Like what we just said, where I had that small sample size and at the end of the AA season that went really well. And I think like the fall league being a continuation of that success was just a testament of like, hey, I mean, yeah, I've been gone for 4 months or whatever it is, but I'm still very much here. Like I deserve to be at this level. I trust myself to be able to pitch at this level consistently and have success. And so I think the fall league was, for me at least, a testament of that, and kind of, cementing that confidence and kind of showing people like, hey, don't forget about me. And so I think that was huge.
When you go down there, you're there with such a talented group from the Phillies side. Alec Boehm, Spencer Howard, both of whom are in the big leagues now. Mickey Moniak was there. What's it like, especially for those couple of guys, watching them now in the major leagues and kind of realizing, man, I'm really close. What's it been like seeing their pathway this year to reach the majors, even in such an unorthodox year?
It's been so cool, man. I mean, like it feels weird to like tweets from your former team, kinda, when they post about your buddies and teammates. But I mean, if Spencer has a good night and they post about it, I'm gonna like it. I don't care. if Boehm hits the nuke, and like I'm all over that. So I mean, just like, for those guys to be doing what they're doing right now, it's fun to watch, man. They're both doing great. I think they're only going to get better once they have like a little bit more experience up there, and it's so fun to watch. But I mean, it does put into perspective like how close you are, and I think that for me, I mean, it's like I don't have the stuff that Spencer does, obviously, but I feel like I can keep pace with him as far as like results go and everything. So, I mean, for me, I think it's just, just waiting for the opportunity to come up and taking it. And hopefully it comes up sooner than later, and I get to join him up there. Maybe not on the same team, but, in the same aspect, Yeah,
and just to go back to the AFL and how dominant you were there, you had a 1.06 ERA, 22 strikeouts, and 17 innings pitched. In many ways, that was the last time we got to see you publicly, really, on a baseball field. And the same thing for the Red Sox. Alternate site stuff. I know there was some stuff about sharing data and being able to do that, but in many ways, the last time they got to really scout you was in the AFL. How much do you feel like ending on that note last year propelled you to the point where another organization would look to go out and get you in a major league trade like this?
Well, I mean, everything over there is under the microscope. You have scouts from every team at pretty much every game, and they're looking for guys that, in their future they could see themselves going after. And so I think that the way I performed kind of set me up for that to happen. And I'd like to imagine that a few teams were really looking to try and get me, and turns out one was. And I mean, that ended up obviously happening. And I think the fall league was just a huge opportunity for me to kind of prove myself, like I said. And yeah.
And I talked to you last year during that fall league run, and one of the things that stood out from that conversation was we talked about your changeup, and a lot of scouts believe that it's one of your best pitches, obviously, but what stands out to me is that some even analytics pick it up as a curveball because it's got so much movement and it dives down so well. What has the development of that pitch been like since the AFL? What are you able to do with it now, and what are you still working on with it?
Honestly, I feel like the shutdown kind of hindered it a little bit. It was hard to keep it consistent without someone kind of like tugging my leash and telling me, hey, don't like overpronate or anything. Don't do that. So I think once we got out here, once we started going again, I kind of like got the feel back for it. And like now it's back to where it was. It's nasty again. But yeah, I mean, early on it was kind of tough because it was like my best pitch isn't here. And it took me a couple outings for it to come back. And then after that, it's been pretty smooth sailing, I'd say. But yeah, I mean, that's the money pitch right now. That's like what off of my fastball is going to get the most swings and misses. It's going to keep a lot of hitters from getting comfortable in the box. And I mean, I know my strengths, and I know that is one of my main strengths, the ability to throw that consistently for a strike and get swings and misses on it.
I find that interesting what you said about the shutdown and how that affects pitches. You know, I know there's a lot of communication in organizations about working on stuff, but unless you have a pitching coach over your shoulder, that's difficult for the months of time that we all missed in the game. What other effects do you feel like the shutdown had on you as a pitcher, and where do you feel like you've developed maybe some of your other pitches in the last couple of months, both working on your own and now at the alternate sites?
Well, talking about the shutdown, it was tough. I'd assume for everybody, because you know what they say is like you're your own best pitching coach. Well, sometimes if you don't know like for certain things how to be your best pitching coach, you can kind of like get into bad habits. And I felt like with the changeup, I said I was overpronating, and that was a bad habit I got into kind of. And so, getting back to actually speaking with like pitching coaches and having them like actually watch me, and the same goes for like my slider and like just the arm slots, the arm action that goes with both of those pitches, and keeping them consistent to where they were last year was kind of the hardest part about this whole shutdown, I'd say. It's just it's tough to say just because it was such a weird time, and you don't, like I said, you don't really have anybody tugging on your leash, but it was such a weird thing to come back and be like, why am I not getting swings and misses on these pitches anymore? And then it turns out, oh, I'm doing this way different. But like getting to work with the guys over in Philly and now the guys over here, I feel like I'm back to where I was last year at the end. And again, I feel like I'm in a good spot.
And now joining the Red Sox organization, obviously things aren't going great on the major league side, but I feel like this is a really good time for an upper level arm like yourself to join the club, because they are trying out so many different arms this year at the major league level and trying to see who sticks. What is the atmosphere like among you pitchers in Pawtucket right now, knowing everybody's basically a moment away from getting that call? And how close do you feel to the majors now in this new organization?
Overall, I mean, it seems like it's all hands on deck. We had like 2 or 3 guys just go up, and it felt like half the team just left. Yeah, I mean, personally, I feel like I'm close. I don't know if my opportunity is going to pop up this year. I guess it kind of just depends on what transpires for the rest of the season and what Heim and everybody decides to do. So it's not really in my control. All I can do is kind of try and force their hand and see if they want to take a chance on me this season or wait till next year. Either way, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I know I'm pretty close, and I can feel it at times. And so, controlling the controllables and patience is just the biggest thing right now for me, I guess.
All right, Connor, we'll end on this one. We talked about it a little bit before off air, but this is a unique season in so many ways. But this was supposed to be the last season for the Pawtucket Red Sox. The Red Sox are holding their alternate site at Pawtucket this year, so we'll see what 2021 brings. But the team's expected to move to Worcester. You guys could be the last team, whatever you want to call it, the last players at McCoy Stadium in a minor league setup. What has stood out to you about McCoy Stadium? What kind of memories are you generating there? And what are your earlier views there, just being there for 2 weeks?
Well, I mean, I've never played here. I never got to come here in AAA or anything. So, I mean, so far it seems like it's got a lot of history behind it. And from everything I've seen and heard from the people who have played here, they say it's a great experience for the fans and the players. And I mean, I can't like give any personal testimony, but I got to imagine playing there would just be a blast. I mean, the area is super cool, and I'd imagine staying here for a season would be pretty cool. But I mean, I'm new, so I can't really. I got to just go off of what people say, but from what people say, it sounds like it's a great ballpark with a lot of history, and it's kind of sad that it's not going to be here after this year, supposedly. But I mean, we'll see what happens, and I mean, I'm stoked to be one of the last to potentially step foot on it and play. So. It is kind of a cool feeling, bittersweet, if you will.
Connor Seabold, one of the newest members of the Boston Red Sox organization, and now Boston's number 23 prospect, who is in Pawtucket and getting set for whatever comes down the pike in this strange 2020. But Connor, congrats on the new organization and getting acclimated and all that type of stuff. And we'll be following as the weeks and months go on. And be safe and be healthy. And we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, appreciate it, guys.
Much to discuss with Benjamin Hill this week, who joins the show from New York City. Hello, Ben.
Hello,
I just assumed you were in New York. I'm assuming you're in New York.
I am, as always, or almost always. I am in New York City, specifically the borough of Brooklyn. Also in the borough of Brooklyn is, Coney Island, home of the Brooklyn Cyclones. And I actually went to Coney Island. I've not been riding the subway much, just given the whole pandemic. But I took the subway to Coney Island. I actually walked past MCU Park, and I bought a Coney Island tank top that I'm wearing right now. I remember a couple of weeks ago I was talking about how into flip-flops I became. Now I'm just like doing my job in a tank top as well, and tank tops are real game changers. I'd always been wary of them for whatever reason. I guess I didn't think they fit my aesthetic, but man, now that I'm wearing a tank top, I want to wear a tank top every day.
Well, that's good. It's you got to squeeze every last bit of summer out of the final 3 weeks of summer. How did we get here? How was it September? Well, let's dive in. We got a lot to discuss with Ben. There's a story up on the site right now that we're going to get started with, and that is a look at minor league teams and what they would have done or what they did do this year to honor the centennial celebration of the founding of the Negro Leagues, which happened on February 13th, 1920, when the Negro National League was founded in Kansas City, Missouri. A lot of teams from year to year will honor the legacy and the history of the Negro Leagues, but this year obviously was going to be something different. And we did see Major League Baseball do its Negro Leagues weekend, really, where players wore the commemorative patches for the 100th anniversary. Obviously, we had Jackie Robinson Day/weekend this past weekend, where teams wore the 42 jerseys all weekend in a lot of cases. This would have been a really cool year to see all of these celebrations, and you got a good rundown that's on the site of what it would have looked like in the minor leagues. Take us through some highlights from this.
Yeah, this is another one of my, what would have been articles. I've tried to be pretty sparing with them because obviously you could do that every single week, wondering what would have been with minor league baseball and life in general. But yeah, Tyler, as you mentioned, the fact that Major League Baseball had its belated Jackie Robinson Day, and that was, tied in with the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Negro Leagues. It just got me thinking of all the things that were planned at minor league ballparks. So my story takes a look at the things that were planned, but also in most of the cases when I'm writing about what was planned for 2020, I'm also looking at things that those teams had done in the past that would have informed what they would have done this year as well, and what they will certainly do in the future. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of what would have been, what was, and what will be, if all that makes sense. And putting the story together, I really enjoyed doing it, just seeing all the different alumni, who still visit teams across the country. And obviously, the Negro Leagues, even with Jackie Robinson debuting in the majors in 1947, the Negro Leagues in some parts of the country went all the way into the early 60s, which is kind of shocking when you think about it. But regardless, the men who played in the Negro Leagues, even if they played well into the 1950s or early 60s, they're all pretty old right now. So every time you can go to a minor league ballpark and see Negro League alumni, it's kind of maybe somewhat analogous to World War II veterans. You just appreciate it more and more when you realize that they're just very few among us right now. And, minor league teams in general are, of course, good at rebranding and changing their names for a day. And a lot of real cool stuff with teams, rebranding as their city's, former Negro League identities, like the Akron Black Tie Rights, the Tulsa T-Town Clowns. Charleston, it's not a Charleston team, but they have a connection to Larry Doby because Bill Veeck signed Larry Doby with the Indians, and Mike Veeck, the co-owner of the Charleston River Dogs, is Bill Veeck's son. So the Charleston River Dogs do a tribute to Larry Doby every year, and they've retired his number 14. They will often play as the Newark Eagles, who was the Negro League team that Larry Doby played for before coming to the major leagues as a member of the Cleveland Indians, and so on and so forth. I obviously am kind of rambling at this point and could just continue to ramble for quite some time. But, it's a great exploration of baseball history, is looking at what these teams would have done throughout the country to celebrate the Negro Leagues, of American history. And looking forward to seeing these things continue to happen.
And we've talked about this in the past with other promotions, that so many clubs, minor league clubs, are taking what they were going to do in 2020 and just push it a year to 2021. A lot of these things were already purchased, and a lot of it's sitting in warehouses just ready to go and to be showered upon fans or to be used in ballparks. Obviously, so much of this was tied into the 100th anniversary. So next year will be the 101st anniversary, but you never really need a reason to celebrate the Negro Leagues and its history. How much of this do you feel like is just going to be pushed to next year, and we'll see maybe like a minor league-wide celebration of the Negro Leagues in 2021?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say, but I'd say virtually 100% of this, can continue to be done in 2021 and beyond. You lose the nice round number, and that's unfortunate because round numbers often, bring more attention to whatever the event or incident or anniversary might be. But, we'll have to overlook it. 101 is still pretty catchy. And regardless, you don't need any really specific anniversary. It's the right thing to do to honor this baseball history that exists in so many minor league towns and cities all across the country. And it goes without saying, I guess we're so used to Jackie Robinson Day and just talking about the Negro Leagues and their history. It's still, writing this article, I did still have this moment of just like, this is crazy. The reason we're writing about this is because like all these men were not allowed to play in the major leagues. And I know we all know that. And I know that's all the established fact, but every once in a while, I just take a step back. I'm like, that is crazy. How come it took so long? This is nuts. America, man.
It really is kind of, I mean, it's great, obviously, to honor the history and the legacy, but I think it's really important to keep front and center the reason why the Negro Leagues had to exist in the first place. And a lot of organizations and in Major League Baseball and, historians and people around the game have done a good job of that. But there's definitely a line that you have to make sure is still present between just, oh, cool old throwbacks, and let's talk about these great old players and all that. And also, oh, this is the reason why they were in that circumstance to begin with.
Yeah, 100%. I think you hit the nail on the head there. And that's kind of what I was getting at. I'm writing this story and kind of getting into the more like aesthetic, element of like, wow, these, whatever, Biloxi Dodgers uniforms are pretty cool. But then thinking like, all right, it's cool to celebrate this, but, don't forget in the midst of that, just a truly awful circumstance that made this all have to happen in the first place. And it's tough to have that balance between the the more lighthearted and, colorful celebration of, who these men were and how they played the game and just the realities that caused them to have to do it that way.
Ben, let's switch gears to a different topic. As we have pointed out on the show, it would be the final stretch of the minor league regular season this week, which is insane. And next week, Labor Day always marks the unofficial end to the minor league regular season. There are some leagues that go a few days past Labor Day to wrap up their regular seasons. But there is a tradition around minor league baseball in which, especially for teams that are kind of out of it, not playing for a postseason berth or anything like that, the final day of the season, usually, there is a player who will attempt to play all 9 positions in the same game. And you're working on something about that. Tell us about it.
Yeah, just I think the way we've all been doing, at certain points of the summer, at certain points of the season, our thoughts go to what, would be happening at this time. And so I was thinking, in that sort of shell-shocked way, a lot of us are like, what? The season would be basically almost over right now if it was actually happening at all? I mean, that's just a crazy thing to think about. And the fact that, here we are having this conversation in September, that feels surreal. But I thought of Labor Day in the minors, and, one of my first thoughts was exactly that, how it's such a common thing for a guy to play all 9 positions. This is not something that, minor league baseball could plan for on a top-down basis, or it just sort of seems to happen, not every single year, but most years. So I did a bunch of research yesterday, and, I hit on the number 9 for 9 positions, but I found 9 examples just since 2014, and it didn't happen in 2018. So I found or in 2019. So I found 9 examples between 2014 and 2018 of guys who played all 9 positions in a game, and it was almost always on, if not Labor Day itself, on Labor Day weekend. For Tyler, that reason you mentioned that, the teams are out of it. They're looking to do something fun and memorable and kind of add some levity and intrigue to what is a grueling season. The other thing that teams do, is sometimes they will all use one bat, the same bat throughout the course of the game. So that's another one. I couldn't find enough examples of that to, build an article around it. But I found 9 guys since 2014 who played all 9 positions in a minor league game, and just writing a story about them and what their experience was. Just going off our previous MiLB.com, game recaps from those days. So it begins in 2014 with Nathan Orff of the Brevard County Manatees, and takes us through 2018 when 3 players did it that year. Nash Knight for Dunedin, Hernan Irabaran for the Louisville Bats, and Brandon Polizzi for the Vancouver Canadians. They all did it in 2018. And it's weird. Only 5 players have ever done it on the major league level. And, I was able to find 9 who did it just in the last, 6 years alone. So it's a much more common thing in minor league baseball to play all 9 positions in a game.
And in some of those, the research that you've done in culling all of these guys together, what kind of stands out as a theme other than it just being the last weekend of the season?
Well, often, obviously, these players who do it are players who have, some level of utility man background and have shown their versatility throughout the course of the season or the course of their careers. I also think, generally speaking, the players who do this are not top prospects. Most of them didn't even touch the major leagues. And in a lot of ways, I do think there's this kind of unspoken thing where, the managers who give these guys that opportunity, I think there's kind of this unspoken knowledge of, you're probably not going to get to the major leagues. Your career might be much closer to over than it is to beginning. And, but, you're going to get to do something that puts you in a special club that you'll remember for the rest of your life. So there's this kind of sweetness about it, I find, or bittersweetness, as it were, to have the opportunity to do this, but usually in the context of a professional career that didn't, fully go that player's way in terms of true long-term, major league success, certainly.
Benjamin Hill is on Twitter at Ben's Biz, and you can check out all his stuff up on the site right now. And enjoy the tank tops and the flip flops, man. Thanks for doing this. We'll talk.
Yeah, man, it's an endless summer over here in my home office. And if you want to talk to me about tank tops on Twitter, hit me up at Ben's Biz. It's a topic that's on my mind lately. So always happy to talk about this new sartorial phenomenon that's going on in my life.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, guys.
That will do it for this week's episode of the show before the show. Sam has our prospect fun fact before we head out of here, presented by Nationwide.
Yeah, I didn't get to talk too much about him in the first segment, just trying to keep things streamlined. But we mentioned in the first segment, Taylor Trammell got traded from the San Diego Padres to the Seattle Mariners. Big move for him and a big move for that organization. Mariners obviously rebuilding right now, kind of where the San Diego Padres were a year or two ago. So they get Trammell. They add him to their big list of outfield prospects right now: Jared Kelenic, Julio Rodriguez, Kyle Lewis. Obviously, Kyle Lewis right in the driver's seat, right there with Luis Robert for AL Rookie of the Year. Going to be really interesting to see how that sorts itself out, but you can never have too much talent in a system. We'll see how things shake out in a year or two. But this is the second time Taylor Trammell has been traded at the deadline. He was also traded last year from the Reds to the Padres. And you might ask yourself, like, what does that mean about him? He is a top 100 prospect, but some people are down on him because the production hasn't necessarily been there for him. He is somebody who certainly has shown speed in the minors. He's shown power at times. The power could be a little bit more for him. But his combination of offensive tools is actually pretty unique in minor league baseball. So here's the fun fact that I came up with. Since 2016, which is when he first appeared in the minors, there have only been 6 players to meet these requirements. To have 100 stolen bases, as Taylor Trammell does, to have at least 30 home runs, which Taylor Trammell does, and have a WRC plus of at least 100. So they have to be an above average hitter. They have to have hit at least 30 homers and stolen 100 bags. Only 6 minor leaguers, think about all the minor leaguers that have played since 2016, only 6 meet that requirement. Trammell is one. Kyle Tucker, who we know is a pretty good power speed combo guy when he was in the minors. He's another. Sam Hilliard of the Colorado Rockies, as Tyler knows well. He's another. John Andrioli, Jose Siri, and Steven Wren are the others as well. Obviously, there's not some huge names on here. If Fernando Tatis Jr. had stayed in the minors since 2016, I'm sure he would be on here. But still, the fact that it's this unique tells you why teams are trying to get him. And that we know that he might have another gear in there for production once he starts to figure things out and get things consistent at the next level. Really think this year would have been a big year for him once he got settled in the Padres organization. Unfortunately, that didn't happen because there was no minor league baseball, but there are reasons why teams keep believing in Taylor Trammell and keep coming and trying to buy him and adding him to their minor league mix. And this is a big reason why, because his skill set is fairly rare across the minor league. So hopefully come 2021, maybe next year at AAA Tacoma in the Mariners system, or maybe even at AA Arkansas, he can start to show it on the field a little bit more. But as things stand, even now, it's pretty cool to see what he's been able to accomplish since he first got to the pros in 2016.
So that will do it for this week's episode of the Show Before the Show. And before we go, again, our biggest thanks to all of you for your support and for tuning in, for getting in touch with us, sending us your questions and your thoughts, and tweeting at us, and all the encouragement and all the support that you've given us. It's pretty cool in a year in which we have no minor league baseball to continue to expand the base of people that listen to the show and engage with the show, and all that has been really awesome for us. And so I think I speak for Sam when I thank you from the bottom of my heart and our hearts, and stay safe and be well and keep wearing your mask and washing your hands and treating each other well. And we'll be back to do this again next week for you. For Sam Dykstra, I'm Tyler Mom. We'll talk to you then.